Hey there, Balanced Lady Bosses. This is Stacy, and welcome to Epic Reflections of a great conversation that I just had with Ty Heath, who is a director at LinkedIn, focuses primarily on the B2B marketing side of the business, and also has really created some amazing, impactful initiatives while working inside of the LinkedIn organization. But aside from that, she has had a really interesting career path, education path even. Like I learned things like she at one point tried out for the Olympics. Like really interesting story that really taught me a few things that I did not already know about Ty. So great episode guide for you to listen to. But more importantly, today we're here to reflect on the gems that were dropped in my session with Ty Heath. So the first thing that I wanted to kind of zone in on was this whole discussion about having a message. So when you listen to Ty's interview, you will see that she is very intrigued by and very passionate about messaging and the way that our words create cultures and create societal norms. And so a huge part of Ty's energy and focus is around, messaging and language and the way that we use marketing to enable and empower our community. So one line that she actually said, which I am sharing because it's something that I am doing and something that so many other persons who are a part of the digital marketing and social community in terms of sharing. She says, if you have a message, share it, right? So for many of us, we have something within us, something inside of us that's a burning thought, an idea, maybe a response to something that was happening in your environment, maybe either directly to you or to your community. In particular, with the Black Lives Movement, I think a lot of persons where, this year where they may not have been speaking up before or sharing their perspective on social justice or injustice, they started to share their messages. And so there was quite a significant movement in the social media space around that particular time. And that's essentially what really social media is about. It's about messages. And you will have messages that are positive as well as messages that are not really so great, right? Messages that don't resonate at a soul level because they are more based on ego and material things, not in a healthy way, versus really focused on uplifting one's soul or, helping you to navigate life in a better way, or helping you to invest your time and energy in improving yourself, improving your productivity, improving your mindset, widening and expanding the way you think, right? That's all language and messages. So if you have a message, in particular, if you have a message that will be powerful, impactful, something that will be on purpose, please share it. That's what this whole movement is about. I created a movement so that I could share a message that we as women can connect to our work and to our lives in a way that keeps us healthy and sane, right? Okay, so that's the first gem. If you have a message, share it, please. The second gem that I took away was around technology. And even though I'm a techie, even though I spend quite a bit of my time in that space and I'm president of a tech organization, I don't really spend a lot of time on the podcast talking about technology. Having interviewed Ty and really talked about the mission of LinkedIn and the power that we have in technology, I just wanted to highlight how important it is for us to take on using our technology in a responsible way, right? Many of us get caught up in the feed. And I talk about the social feed, right? Where you're not really learning anything. You may be getting into, observation of drama and the latest hot story that's trending, etc. But it's not really edifying your soul, right? And when we talk about being responsible in our use of technology, technology is everywhere now. It's no longer inside of an IT department. And so with that in mind, we have to become a little bit more present to our level of responsibility with technology? How are we showing up in the space of tech? And how are we taking responsibility for our actions with the use of technology? Because we are now all using technology, whether you're a techie or not, right? So when you think about technology in your space, no matter how small it is, your cell phone is a piece of technology. Your cell phone is literally a computer these days, right? Use it for your benefit and for the benefit of your community in service of yourself and others. Don't just spend your time there sucking up everything that comes across your feed. Put out your own messages of positivity. And it doesn't have to be en masse. You can still have a private account and share with people in a way that is impactful and powerful and purposeful. LinkedIn is great for a professional sharing space. We talked about actually investing time on LinkedIn versus, just kind of being in the feed and looking at the feed, because there are so many rich opportunities for learning and exploration on the platform. Like literally there's a whole section called LinkedIn Learning that teaches you skills that you can use, not only to help you, like if you're in a leadership role, not only to help you expand your knowledge and your ability to lead, but also to just upskill yourself, as an individual. They have lots of things on there that about life skills in general that you can use. So use technology to your benefit. Use your platforms that you interact with to your benefit, even if you're not a hardcore techie, right? Now, the third gem is something that I actually think I started talking about online when we were going through the whole process of the Black Lives Matter movement. And the conversation I started to have with persons was about economic power. As a matter of fact, it was one of the reasons behind me starting one of my online courses, the offline to online business bootcamp, where I was helping companies to move their businesses online now, due to COVID, and we had to be more virtual in the way we worked. And so I was helping companies, mostly small to medium enterprises, with how to set up their companies online. What are the important things they need to consider? And the reason why I took this project on and decided to launch this course was because of the discussion around economic power. And economic power is largely tied to the influence that you have on decisions made in society. And this is typically based on whether or not you own your own company, or you have shares in a business, or you are actually affecting the society through your work. And I had to reflect on myself and what am I doing in the space of my economic power? I call the whole conversation of what I have and what I own my pie. And so when I think about a pie, people that own businesses, I work for an investment company, right? The person that has the most shares in that company has the biggest slice of the pie. If you work as an employee without shares, you don't have any of that pie. You get a paycheck, but the moment that company decides, or you decide, you no longer participate in the flavors of the pie. You ain't got nothing from the pie, basically, right? So one of the reasons why entrepreneurship has become such a big deal is because persons want their own pies. They want to have their own piece of economic power that can be utilized then to influence decisions that are made in society. And so I encourage all of you, I remind you of the priority and the importance and the value of having your own pie. And even if you're participating in somebody else's dream, try to get a piece of their pie so that it's not just your efforts without you now coming on the other side of the benefit of having that economic power and influence and that vote, that right to participate in the decision-making process, right? So think about economic opportunity and how your economic power is feeding into that. So that's gem number 3. And then the last piece that I have, which I think ultimately is one of the overarching themes that came through the discussion, because a lot of the things that Ty did in her life were not necessarily along the path of the typical construct, the traditional model. She went to Georgetown University for politics, like literally was doing econ as a major, was in Washington, D.C., thought for sure she was going to end up in that space. But she was also an athlete. And that athleticism took her to California, dropped her into Silicon Valley. And she ended up right there in the middle of the Stanford campus, and being around the big giants, Google and LinkedIn, right next door to each other, when Google was just, as she said, 4 buildings. And her path took a turn. Now you may think, but oh my gosh, didn't she waste her degree? No, because that knowledge is exactly what she's now applying to her role in LinkedIn. And so you don't have to follow the same path that you feel is the way to, that is not necessarily the way to go just because somebody says this is the path to go. So possibly had Ty not taken the risk of stepping outside of her decided comfort zone to, hey, go try it for the Olympics and end up in a completely different state, she would not have accessed this role that has now, this company that has now helped her to just advance and expand in her own development as a leader and in her own career, and even in impacting other persons. So think about the status quo, right? And as you know, I'm looking down here at my notebook, right? Because I have my gem notes. And think about the status quo constructs that keep us from reaching our full potential. In the Transform Her movement, which is an event initiative that is a part of LinkedIn that Ty and her partners started, her colleagues started in 2018, inside of that movement is the conversation of relinquishing the status quo constructs, right? So aside from in her own life, she stepped out of the common constructs, the status quo constructs, when it comes to thinking about Transform Her and how to impact women who are in the space of their professional lives and wanting to step into more powerful opportunities, maybe climb that ladder or climb that lattice, whatever it is you're climbing. And they are able to do so through connecting with each other, learning about opportunities for equity, diversity, and inclusion, and creating access points to persons of influence who are making the decisions about how people work and how women are able to move, advance in the employment sphere, in the leadership sphere. How many of us are sitting at the table, right? And how many of us, and us meaning women of color from all over the world, how many of us are able to access opportunities that are made available to men, right? And so I encourage you guys to examine your lives and examine where you may be conforming to a status quo construct, even though in your gut, in your intuitive self, you know that's something not too right? So just reflect on who you're being in your working world and how you could possibly take on things that maybe are in a space of desire for you that you haven't really stepped into because you're thinking, well, that's a bit out of the box, or that's a bit traditional, and I haven't seen where a woman has been able to do this. I've only seen where guys have been able to do this, or they've only reserved that for senior roles, even though I feel like, in my current role, I could actually bring value. Just examine your thought process and how you see yourself and opportunities that could exist for you in a space where you're not currently exploring, because, your mind is telling you that's more traditional. Don't step on any toes over there, right? Now, that's my time for us today, guys. I thank you so much for listening to another episode of Reflections. And I encourage you to go and check out my interview with Ty Heath from LinkedIn. It was really great chatting with her. And I wish you all the best for the rest of your day. Thanks so much for joining. And I look forward to talking with you on another episode of the Balanced Lady Boss Show.